July 4th weekend, we got a movie from the Utah-based right-wing Angel Studios about a young George Washington fighting side by side with the British against the French and indigenous North Americans. And I have to say, what a strange time for this film. The United States does not exist without France because we do not win the American Revolution without France. The Battle of Yorktown is not won by Washington without France because the battle does not happen without France. The Siege of Yorktown was the turning point of the war. It was where Cornwallis surrendered. The majority of the soldiers present at this battle were French. The 29 warships holding the British here and bombarding them from the water were French. British Navy under Admiral Graves was not there because the French fought him off and that Navy had to go back to New York to resupply. Washington brought his force to Yorktown because he was convinced by Rochambeau he was going to stay in New York and keep fighting there. But the movie we get for the 4th of July is once again about Washington fighting side by side with the British and killing French and indigenous people. Not only did France and people like the Marquis de Lafayette pour their blood, sweat, and tears into the revolution, it was a mistake for France. They put in so many soldiers, so many warships, so much money. This was one of the factors that contributed to the collapse of their own economy, which would lead to their revolution in the 1790s. Frankly, without French support of the American Revolution, there is no America and there is no French Revolution, perhaps. During the so-called French and Indian War, most of the indigenous people in North America were fighting side by side with the French. They believed that they had more respect for their way of life. They had pretty successful trade with them. French still wanted to own their land, but they said they would basically let them do their thing while they operated in their own turf. Would that have been true in the long term? I don't think so, but again, most of the tribes were on the French side with the exception of the Iroquois Confederacy. The moment that the film has as its climax is the Battle of the Monongahela. This is where a small force of 600 Ottawas, Ojibwas, and Potawatomis, supported by 100 militia and 100 French regulars, defeated 1,300 British regulars. Some provincial troops present as well under George Washington himself. The indigenous army inflicted over 900 casualties, took under 100 themselves. This is one of their greatest victories in this war. Washington was able to organize a retreat for the people that survived in this battle, but still a very strange moment to focus on. Because again, you have people like Chris Pratt saying, come out and celebrate America's 250th birthday. He said it's like Braveheart for Americans. Braveheart works because it's about indigenous people fighting back against an oppressive force. This movie is about George Washington fighting with the people we would rebel against and killing the people that would help us. Of course, there is AI used in this film proudly over and over and over. If I was a right-wing propagandist and tasked with making a movie about Washington, I would focus on his time after this war and his growing disillusion with the British Empire and their taxation of Americans, stuff like the Stamp Act, the moment where he realized he wanted to be part of a revolution. If the idea is to actually push forward the image of America. If you were an interesting filmmaker, you could juxtapose that moment in history, this time with him wanting independence, pushing back against the British, and him being a plantation owner and having enslaved people working his land. That would be a very challenging film, but if it was done right, that would be a very interesting one. What he decided to do was play on Bush-era hatred of the French and the idea of indigenous people being othered and evil, right? So that Washington can be the hero fighting alongside the British. Very odd.